China is telling the United States it's playing with fire. Chinese rare earth producers are saying that they're ready to weaponize their dominance over the rare earth market and warning that any U.S. tariff on China will come at a cost. Familiar story. First and foremost, to the U.S. consumer, like the conversation we were just having with Mr. Johnson. Tonight, China is telling us just that, and Michelle Greenstein's been following the story. Good enough to join us now. First of all, remind folks out there who may be hearing for the first time what a rare earth mineral is and why it's significant.
Sure. So rare earth minerals are important to the economy, essentially because they're used from everything, from our smartphones to even missiles and other military technology. It's a group of 17 vital elements that aren't only in China. They've been discovered in some other countries, but China right now has a huge dominance over that market. So now we're hearing from China's Rare Earth Association. They're warning that this trade conflict between the U.S. and China is actually going to come at a cost to U.S. businesses and U.S. consumers. This comes several days after U.S. President Donald Trump just threatened a new round of tariffs on China. So this is coming from an organization called the Association of China Rare Earth Industry. It's a collection of 300 miners, processors, and manufacturers of these rare earth minerals, and they're calling Washington's trade tariff policy bullying. And they're saying that, hey, these tariffs are going to hurt the U.S. first and foremost. They're going to hurt your market and your consumers. And
this is something that especially the tech industry in the United States is very bullish on, right? They've long depended on China and that relationship for these rare earth minerals. Is there another place we can get them?
So actually, it's funny you asked. They've also been discovered in both Australia and Brazil. Luckily enough for the U.S., those are two U.S. allies right now. But China has often used their dominance in the rare earth industry as a chip in trade disputes before, because the U.S. mostly relies on China to supply these materials. Yes, for the tech industry, like you mentioned, but also for military equipment like fighter jets. Exactly. So not only that, but we also have the smaller things that we tend not to think about as much, like sensors and magnets. So these are in a lot of our products here in the U.S., to the point where the Pentagon very recently, last month, asked U.S. miners to actually look into this and develop plans for how they could develop their own industry as an apparent strategy for weakening our dependence on China in this area.
Our friend who you know, John Jordan, has told me that the problem with these rare earth minerals is that they're messy to harvest.
Right.
And that China's been doing it because they've got enough land, but it would be hard for us and other countries to do this kind of thing. Is that right?
That's exactly right. And let me just paint a bit more of a picture about how dominant we are on China in this area, because it's all in the numbers. As of October of this year, China filed about 26,000 rare earth patents. And in the same year, as of October, the U.S. filed just 9.8 thousand. And even more so, Chinese companies account for 85% of the global production of these high purity rare earth elements. And the other 15% actually comes from one company, an Australian company called Lynas, which is why we're hearing news now, and this is actually very significant, that the U.S. as well as Japan are actually teaming up with Australia to limit China's dominance in this area. This company, this Australian company, Lynas, which is the world's only other rare earth producer that's outside of China, just signed a deal with a U.S. company called Blue Line to set up a separation facility here in the U.S.
But here's the problem. Yeah, that's all well and good, and it'd be great if we can get competitive and get caught up with the Chinese on this. But shouldn't you have done that before you started the trade war?
Right.
It's almost like you start a fight and then you realize the other guy's got, weapons and you don't, right?
Right. I mean, if what China's Rare Earth Association comes true, then the American citizen, the U.S. taxpayer, is going to be bearing this cost. The American businesses are going to fall victim to this trade dispute between the two biggest economies on Earth right now. But to take your point even further, although the U.S. citizen and the U.S. consumer is going to fall victim to this, the U.S. ruling class will be just fine, because they, in fact, have moved a lot of their investments to China. And the rise of China doesn't hurt them as much as it hurts the regular U.S. consumer.
Yeah, so you're saying in the end, the economy gets hurt, and as usual, the guys at the top don't get hurt as much.
That's right. They don't think of it in terms of nation versus nation.
But they're still just as interested in keeping the United States economy on top. And the economy,
political players, for sure.
The economy's going to be hurt. The economy's going to be hurt by something like this.
Absolutely.
Even if it's in the interim, right?
That's very true, especially in the short term. But at the same time, when you are playing at the top, when the economy isn't doing well, sometimes that plays in your favor. So we don't know what's happening behind closed doors.
And I guess down to 30 seconds, there's always a possibility that the Trump administration and the Chinese will come up with some kind of accord and put this whole thing to bed. Although right now it seems doubtful because both sides are pretty sour.
Right. At this point, this is China's response to the U.S.'s almost year-long now technological Cold War against one of their technology companies. This is them saying, hey, we have chips to play with, too.
This is a great conversation. Thanks, Michelle. Good reporting.